Hill. Welcome to the Hill's Democratic National Convention at the Hub at City View, and for those watching on thehill.com. The Hill is proud to be hosting these discussions all week on politics of the day, and especially kicking off this first one, which is sponsored by TVB along with the National Beer Wholesalers Association. On social media, you can follow at The Hill Events with the hashtag TheHill@DNC. Right now, I'd like to introduce Abby Auerbach, Executive Vice President, Chief Communications Officer at TVB. Please welcome her.
Thanks so much, Bob. Are we on? So, Bob, thank you so much. TVB, we are delighted to be here, to be partnering with all of you today. A special opportunity for us as the Trade Association of Local Television, representing over 800 television stations across the country. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank our partners here at The Hill. We would like to thank all of you here for all of your business that you do with political advertising across the country in all years, not just in these big election years. My boss, the CEO of TVB, really hoped to be here today, sends his regrets. He unfortunately had to not say no to a very important constituent. Granddaughters, is that better? This is a very important part of my remarks. Steve's granddaughters insisted that he join them on the family vacation, and you know there are some lobbyists you cannot say no to. So here I am to tell you that TVB is the trade association representing local broadcast television. On behalf of all of our board and our stations, we want to let you know that, like you, we get voters. We get how to reach them, we get how to influence them, and we're here to let you know that we are a resource for you with all of the research and data that we do with our independent studies, and especially now in looking at swing voters. We know that at the end of the convention cycle, it will be essentially important. And at our website, wegetvoters.com, there's a wealth of information that is free and available to you, and we invite you to visit it and learn more about all of the proprietary research that's there. So join me, please, in a pint and join our speakers in predictions and visit We Get Voters, and I will see you after the session today with Bob. We can talk more about it. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Abby. Thank you. Okay, I want to introduce our panel. Celinda Lake, Democratic pollster and strategist, and Simon Rosenberg, president and founder of NDN, two very prominent Democrats. Celinda, let's start with you. The news of the day, Debbie Wasserman Schultz has decided to step down, but not effective immediately. The news this afternoon was she will not gavel the convention at the beginning, which is customary for the DNC. Chair, was this the right decision? And some Democrats are saying, why wait until the end of the week? She's become a bit of a distraction.
Well, I think it's a bit of a distraction in a vacuum. Is this mic on?
You hear?
Can you hear me? I think it's a bit of a distraction in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
I think the news of the day is going to be Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Michelle Obama. So I can't wait for those speeches to start. I'm sure Debbie Wasserman Schultz can't either. I think it was very gracious of her and exactly the right thing to do, to step down and to not gavel. And, you know, we are unified. 87% of Democrats support Hillary Clinton. We are unified, we are excited, and we are going to build on that momentum.
Simon, you've been outspoken for more debates on the Democratic side. Was this the right decision to step down? Could it have come maybe earlier? Would that have been better? So the news media would be writing about something else.
It is kind of amazing what happened in the last couple of days. I mean, the Clinton campaign has been so sure-footed, since they knew they had the nomination won back in April or May, whenever it was. I've been really impressed with the campaign, and I think they've been doing everything right. And up until the last few days, even the negotiations and the work they did to bring Sanders along during the platform committee, and even the superdelegate deal that got done in the last few days, has been really smart. And I think it was a great example of how we can cooperate and work together and find common ground and advance. And so I think this all came as a bit of a shock to folks because things were going so well, right? And so, but I agree with Celinda. I think that once, our heavyweight speaker, I mean, it's amazing that these speakers you mentioned are all in one night.
I know.
I mean, it's like this is and part of this is we're a mature governing party. We have a lot of very successful people at the national level as Democrats, and you're going to see that play out in contrast to what we saw last week. And I think you're going to see that play out this week. We're going to have 4 really good nights, and I think we're going to come out of here feeling really good, and this will be in the rearview mirror, I think.
Celinda, what do you make of new polling came out today, as I'm sure you're aware, that Trump got a bump, and of course he was bragging about it today. He
Now
reads
there's
polls.
a shocker.
Yeah. Does that worry you? Was that expected? They had a strong last night with Ivanka's speech and Trump's speech. Rough beginning, no doubt about it, with the Melania speech and the plagiarism. But what did you think of the new numbers in the Trump bump?
I think it's a traditional bump. Would I prefer not to have had it? Sure. I think we'll get a bump, and then I think we're in for a very close race with Hillary Clinton ahead. But I think it's a good reminder to all of us, and Democrats are prepared to do this. We've got to do everything that we plan and more. We have to get our vote out. We have to get our message to independent and suburban women and moms. And it's going to be I think it's going to be a close election till the end, unless Donald Trump does something totally crazy. And also, if you have 4 days solidly of pounding Hillary Clinton or anybody, then you're going to see some impact. But I think it's very short-lived, and I think that we'll get a bounce, and then we're just going to be in a tight race with Hillary Clinton ahead, I think.
Simon, what do you expect from the Sanders speech tonight? Do you expect a big unifying speech?
I think what's interesting is that they couldn't even really give him his own night because Michelle Obama, you needed to fit in Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama. I mean, this is my 8th convention. We were talking about this. And I feel this is different than any of the other conventions I've been to because the Democrats have so many heavyweights, right, that they have to sort of, create room for. And I think, I think Bernie's clearly on board, right? And I think that he's doing his best to bring along his folks. I think it's going to take time. I don't think it's going to be settled by the end of this week. I think, as you pointed out, there's already been significant consolidation and coming together. And I think what will really matter, I think, is what Bernie also does over the next few months, right? And how much does he campaign, and how much space does the Clinton campaign give him, and how do they integrate him? I mean, think about it. There are somewhere between 10, 11, 12 targeted states. And we're going to look at the principles the Democrats are going to have, right? They're going to have, Tim Kaine and Hillary and Bill Clinton and Joe Biden and Jill Biden and Barack and Michelle and Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, right? It means that we can have one of those major principles in each target state every single day between now and the end of the election, making news and making noise. And there's just never been a team like this before. I really think that there's sort of an unprecedented way that the Clinton campaign can run the election if they choose to, right? And so I think Bernie's going to be a really important part of that. And so I'm confident that he's made the decision that he's on board and we're going ahead. And now he's going to have to work hard to bring everybody else with him.
Celinda, as far as...
I think, by the way, I think Bernie Sanders has always been, and this is one of the reasons I think many Democrats, including many Hillary supporters, myself included, have admired him so much from the get-go. He is about the agenda. And I think part of his speech is going to be agenda setting, and it's going to be agenda that is well received by that room, no matter who you're a delegate for. So I think people are resoundingly for this agenda, and it's great for agenda setting, and it's what our party needs, because we need to set out what is our economic plan, what are we going to do as a party, and I think it'll follow through into our gubernatorial races, et cetera. So I think it's also going to be about the agenda, and the agenda is wildly popular with Democrats.
Well, and just to build on that, I think one of the things he will do tonight also is go through how many victories he's had in the last few weeks, and the platform committee on the political reform stuff, which I bet many of his delegates don't know. And I think that's going to be a very powerful thing, and it's also a sign that the Clinton campaign was creating space for the Sanders arguments, right, and not rejecting them, that there's been a coming together far more than I think people really understand, and I think that's going to be a powerful thing he'll do tonight.
So, Linda, what do you make of, I mean, if you look at both sides, on the Republican side, Mike Pence was selected, and that was seen as a way to help shore up the Republican base. On the Democratic side, not really seen as that kind, Elizabeth Warren wasn't picked, so it's not shoring up the liberal base. But Tim Kaine has gotten, I think, off to a very solid start in interviews. They seem comfortable, Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine together. What do you make of the pick, and what do you think he adds to the ticket? I mean, state-specific to Virginia as well.
So I think it makes a big difference in Virginia, although Terry McAuliffe was a very formidable force there as well. I think this is a governing coalition. I think she made a decision about government, and that's a good contrast to political calculation and to ego, which is what Donald Trump made his choices based on. I think that one of the things that's been very important is people don't appreciate how progressive Kaine's positions have been. And I think there's been a very, very good job done of getting that record out, whether you're talking about 17 years fighting for housing for poor people, or 100% rating for Planned Parenthood, or fighting, being fluent in Spanish because of his commitment in Honduras and elsewhere. And so I think that this is a record. This is not a person who is as well known for being as formidable a leader as he is. Oops, sorry. And I think that's going to be very, very successful.
Tim Kaine, what do you think?
Oh, he's awesome. No,
Do you live in Virginia?
No, I don't. Look, I've been working in national politics and media for almost 30 years. It's hard to believe. I mean, Tim Kaine is one of the best people I've ever met in politics. Just as a human being, as somebody who makes you feel warm and comfortable. He clearly cares, right? I thought what was so powerful about his talk on Saturday was the connection back to his Jesuit roots, right? In high school, I found that very powerful because it sort of was a through line, right? That I didn't really understand about him, right? About how much that had motivated him. I just, look, we meet all sorts of kinds of people in this business, right? He's exemplary, right? And so for that, I've been rooting for him, as his staff knows and as he knows, for the last year and a half. He's been my pick. So I was personally really excited, and I thought his talk on Saturday was
Phenomenal.
Incredible, right? And I think he's going to be a very powerful part of this campaign because he's so approachable and he's very different from the other three, right? I mean, just in tone and the way that he speaks and his demeanor and his kind of all shuck stuff, which is all real, right? And I don't know. I'm very excited. That's why what's happened the last couple of days was kind of a Saturday night, many Democrats went to bed super fired up. I mean, not everybody, right? But for those of us probably more in the establishment part of the party, Kaine was really seen as kind of a brilliant pick and a wonderful guy and a guy that we want to lead us, right? And comfortable leading us. But so I think he's going to be a phenomenal addition to the team. I think one of the things the Clinton, from the structural standpoint, he's an adult. They can just send him out and they're not going to have to worry about him. They're not going to have to manage him. They're not going to worry he's going to screw up somewhere. He knows all these issues inside and out, right? He's already developed a very powerful critique of Trump that sounded like it was coming from inside of him. And so it means that they can stay focused on maximizing her while letting him go do his thing and still add a lot of value during the campaign. And I agree with Linda that I think demographically also tremendously powerful, right? Catholic for the industrial heartland, Hispanic, the Spanish, which will help us in the heavily Hispanic parts of the electorate, and then Virginia and North Carolina, which are two states that we're playing in very hard. So he also brought a lot demographically, I think, and geographically to the ticket. So I think it was a brilliant pick. It was the best pick in my mind that she had.
So, Linda, you said you expect a close race, and certainly the demographics of the country favor the Democratic Party.
Right.
State by state, why is it going to be close? Do you think Pennsylvania is in play? What makes you look at the data and say, this could very well go down to the wire?
Well, I think there are several things. So demographics do work in the Democrats' favor if people show up to vote, and that's a big if. Now, with Latino voters, and Simon is a national expert on this, we've never seen registration rates this high. We've never seen enthusiasm this high. I mean, Donald Trump did for us what we could not do for ourselves. So that is very, very strong. But Asian Americans who now vote 71% for Democrats, African Americans who voted obviously in record numbers. Michelle and Barack Obama will be very important in terms of getting them out to vote. 93% of African Americans who don't vote love Michelle and love Barack Obama, so they can make a big difference. Young people, millennials, and this is where Bernie Sanders will make a difference, and unmarried women under 55 who vote 80% for Hillary Clinton right now if they vote. I mean, Donald Trump, for an unmarried woman under 55, Donald Trump looks like the worst date you've ever had. It's just a question if you're going to show up to vote.
But that's a big question, though, because some Democrats obviously fired up about Hillary Clinton. Other Democrats I know can't stand Donald Trump, and so they're going to vote against him.
Right.
They're not going to vote for her necessarily. I mean, there's an
Although
enthusiasm.
87%, I mean, yes, and part of this is organizationally, right? I mean, even people that don't like him and do like her, and 87% of Democrats nationwide like her, but even people who don't, we have to ask people to vote. We have to tell them their votes are going to make a difference. We have to, and Simon knows this, we have to protect their vote. A third of African Americans today say they're worried their vote's going to be counted. People are worried about being challenged in whole new ways at the polls with these some of these Trump voters. So we have to ask for people's vote. We have to work to get them out to vote. We have never tried for as high a turnout as we want today with as many restrictions against us. So we're going to have to work hard for this vote, and then we're going to have to talk and work hard for suburban women. And we have married women. That's a new focus for the Trump. I mean, despite the fact he's had 3 married women, he is going to target them now with his found expertise. But married women are supporting Hillary Clinton in record high numbers. And we've never had married women and married men disagree as much about their vote as they do today. So we've got to tell women, you know, you have the facts. You have your own way of doing things. You can make up your own mind. And so both of those pieces are going to be important. And I think it's going to be a close election because, yes, long-term demographics favor the Democrats, but turnout restrictions right now don't.
Simon, in a recent Washington Post poll, Donald Trump had an 89% unfavorable rate. How is this race even close?
You mean in the broad public?
Yeah, among Latinos.
Among Latinos, okay.
It's bad with the broad public, but not that bad.
Yeah.
Although he's working on it.
You know,
And do you think he can come back? Do you think, I mean, he's going to have to do better than that to win, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things, Linda, I want you to comment on when I'm done, is just that there's this, in the last couple of days, I've been hearing a lot of people speculating that people lie about their support for Trump in polls. And that it's understated because they don't, they're sort of secretly going to vote for him, but they don't want to admit it to somebody who they don't know on the phone or however they fill out the poll. And that's one of the reasons I think Democrats feel that, you know, if this thing is within 3 or 4, I mean, look what happened with Brexit, and I don't want to create the exact, it's not exactly the same, but it's instructive, which is, you know, we went to bed at night thinking we'd won the Brexit thing, and we didn't. And, you know, in recent years, I mean, in 2014, virtually every Senate race in the country was really close on Labor Day, and it drifted away from us at the end. So Linda's right to give the admonition that, you know, even a 2-3 point lead means that it's functionally even, right? And that, you know, it's like a college basketball game. I always say if it's close in the last 2 minutes, anything can happen. And but I want to just comment on the Hispanic thing. You know, one of the most interesting stats to me about current American politics is that Barack Obama got 53 and 51% of the vote. That's the highest back-to-back showing for the Democrats since 1940 and 1944. And in the same period, the Democrats got to their lowest number in the House since the 1920s and lost the Senate. And most political systems couldn't generate those discordant results at the same time. Right. And one of the main reasons, and there's questions about whether our system is well designed, if it can actually deliver those kinds of discordant results, right? But one of the reasons why is that, you know, the more people vote, the more people participate, the better we do. And we didn't have strong turnout, and frankly, I would argue that the party was not as adequately focused on turning out this sort of episodic electorate, whatever you want to call it, you know, of millennials and Hispanics and new voters, people who are new to voting for us. We can't blame them. I don't like the term drop-off voters or any of the things that implies that somehow there's something wrong with them. It's what's wrong with us, right? That we haven't been able to turn these folks into regular voters. And I think that my major insight into this week, I think, is that I don't think we're going to get people to vote in large numbers by attacking Trump. I think a negative approach is not necessarily going to motivate people to vote. And I'm going to say something contrarian that is not even based on polling data or research, right? I think that's why the positive case we make this week and giving people a reason to vote for us, economic reasons, security reasons, right, political reform, whatever the things that we're going to hear from the Clinton world this week, is really going to be important, because I don't think we're going to motivate Hispanics, for example, by scaring them about Donald Trump. There's going to have to be a reason to also vote for us. It's going to be insufficient just to make this about Trump. And so I think this is a big week for the Democrats. We have to come out of this week having much greater clarity about what a vote for us means. Finally, the Obama speech, I think, is really going to matter on Wednesday, because I also have this belief that the way the election is sort of shaking down is this, right? Trump says, world's going to hell, we need radical change. What we have to say is, look, we've done a pretty good job when we've been in power. Progress has been made over the last 8 years. You elect us, there's more progress. You don't elect us, we go backwards, right? And the predicate of that, though, is that people have to believe that progress has been made. And I think that's a little bit of a jump ball, right? And I don't know that we as a party have adequately sold the success of the Obama presidency. And I think the president's has to move a big chess piece for the Democrats on Wednesday night, right? To really make it clear that his 8 years has left the country better than he found it. If he can do that in a meaningful way, and if we can echo that, I think our likelihood of success in the fall goes way up.
That's a great point. I do, and so Linda, I do want you to answer that Trump question that Simon raised, because I think it's a fascinating one. But also along those lines is that we've seen Joe Biden publicly be annoyed at the Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders campaign for not touting the success and not running on the success. But at the same time, as a pollster, 7 out of 10 Americans think we're going in the wrong direction. So, first question is on that. We could hear some kind of different messages from certainly Bernie Sanders. If there were sometimes if you listen to Bernie Sanders, you would think that a Republican is in the White House. Mm-hmm. So how do you handle those kind of possibly mixed messages? And then the Trump question: are people afraid to say to pollsters, "I'm going to vote for Trump"?
Well, the last is easier to answer,
Okay.
so let me answer that first, which is, the pattern is in the online surveys, even if you control for demographics, Trump does 3 to 9 points better than in telephone surveys. So it really does suggest that there is a secret vote for Donald Trump. And of course, we've had this phenomenon before. We've had secret vote against Barack Obama, white Democrats who thought they were talking to an African American more supportive than white Democrats who were talking to whites, or thought they were talking to a white interviewer. So we've seen these effects before. So I worry there is a bit of a secret Trump voter. I think there's also that Trump could mobilize some voters, some white downscale voters who also haven't voted for a while. And I think those, and some pretty unpleasant voters. And in fact, if you saw during the primaries, one of the strongest correlates of voting for Donald Trump was being a downscale white person who felt threatened economically and who lived near a high concentration of people of color. And this is back to V.O. Key politics. V.O. Key wrote a very famous book about the Southern strategy for the Republicans and how the whites that moved toward the Republican Party were whites who lived disproportionately next to communities of color. So this has been a very unfortunate pattern in our history, and I think it's worth watching. I think it's very hard to do victory laps, and it's interesting, Simon, because I really, this is a very difficult cocktail to mix, because even though Barack Obama's job performance is now higher than it's been for years, and people are like, whoa, he's looking really good now. My kids can watch him. I mean, he has a nice wife. It's the same wife. She writes her own stuff. I mean, wow.
She writes
His stuff
Melania stuff too, right?
as it turns out. Although I feel sorry for Melania because she's kind of thrown into a different world. But So he's looking better and better, but you still have 60% of the voters who want change. And if you think about commercial marketing in this country, Tide doesn't sell you, this is the same Tide your mother had, right?
Yeah.
Tide tells you, this is new and improved Tide, this is Pod Tide, this is Blue Tide, this is Pink Tide. I mean, this is a country, other than you, the single biggest word in marketing in the United States is new.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a country that wants the old. So I think there has to be a change here, but there is a very vivid contrast in the choice. And I think the president can help lay out the choice, and he can talk about his record. This choice has been in the making for 8 years. There were people for 8 years who want to repeal Obamacare. There were people who didn't want to bail out the auto industry. There were people who wanted to give the banks a free ride. There are people that want to open up, who support Citizens United and want to open up campaign financing, and all you have to do is report the gazillion million that you give, and you can buy anybody you want. Mm-hmm. So there is a real distinction here, and I think that's probably more successful, to lay out the kinds of choices we face as opposed to honestly trying to take a victory lap. It's hard. And it's hard for Biden and Obama, who've done a really good job, but it's hard to take a victory lap right now.
I was talking to someone who's not a political insider, and just to kind of test the bumper sticker message, and I said, this is a swing voter, I said, what does Donald Trump want to do? And the answer was, make America great again. And
Yeah.
I said, what does Hillary Clinton want to do? And the answer was, she wants to become president. She lacks a hope and change message. Is that important? I've talked to some Democrats who like, she needs a message that sticks, that you can remember. It may be simple, but in politics, simple is genius.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and you said it, and I really agree with you. This convention has to be about setting up the people. We know in our business that whoever frames the choice usually wins the race. Mm-hmm. So she's got to frame the choice, and she's got to frame it in a way that's simpler, and she's got to give an economic message. I think the whole Democratic ticket is going to do that. I think, I hadn't even thought about your point, Simon, but I think it's really right. I mean, what a benefit. I mean, what a series of people that can talk about these issues and really talk real people's lives. And so we need to set a theme, and then we need to be on it. We need to stay on the same thing. We need to repeat it. And we need to offer also a real clear economic alternative for the future.
What's the most important thing after the convention that Hillary Clinton needs to do? There's more and more criticism in the media. She has not done a press conference in more than 200 days. So that's
She's done lots of interviews.
She's done lots of interviews. That's true. But is it message? Is it winning the debates? What is the key for her?
And by the way, I really appreciate what Celinda said. I should say we first worked together on the first Clinton campaign.
That's right.
In 1992.
That's right.
We were tasked, the two of us worked and built all the direct mail and all the print stuff for the campaign. And we had a lot of fun
Yeah,
together.
we did.
And did good work too, by the way. Look, I think getting back to what Celinda said is that that creating energy and passion, right, and intensity around this election is going to be really important. So I think there's going to be a bus tour starting on Friday, which goes back to '92, right?
Uh-huh.
Carter Wilkie, designed the bus tour back in '92, the famous bus tour, which people loved. And I think it's going to be in part about how the campaign itself, the tone and tenor and the spirit of the campaign, right? And that's going to be everything from, are you going to see all these wonderful Democrats out, pounding really quickly, going all over the country and campaigning, relentlessly. In terms of just, I think one of the things the Clinton campaign did really well this cycle, for example, was I think their social media and it's sort of extolling the work of their volunteers out in the States was really good. I thought that was really effective and good because it created a sense that people were working on the ground, and I thought it was persuasive and it didn't feel, inauthentic, And so I do think that some of this is going to be about creating momentum and energy and that's a tactical. That's in the tactics of how they implement this, right? I mean, the amazing thing about our elections, in '92, there were 31 states 31 targeted states. and I worked with the whole team on all that. And in this election, they're going to be 11, right? 12, somewhere in there. And so it means that with the vast amount of resources that we have, and with the number of public leaders, we can, they can run. We're running 11, 12 campaigns. It's going to lend itself more to creating energy and intensity. And then finally is that I think that some of the Sanders people who worked on new media and social media have come into the campaign. And I think this is really important because one of the challenges that Democrats have, our voters are younger than Republican voters. Older voters watch television, younger voters don't. And we don't really know how to do this yet. Like, we don't really have a successful model that's been tried and tested about how to connect with and speak to younger people who are no longer watching traditional television. And so part of, I think, for you guys to gauge the success of the Clinton effort is that will the Sanders team that did a lot of that stuff, will they be able to exert themselves inside the Clinton campaign and take risks and experiment with stuff that is not necessarily in keeping with some of our buddies who are running this thing, right? Because they're going to have to let go a little bit on that and invent new stuff without a lot of time. There's not a lot of time to do that. I mean, let's just be clear. The Clinton campaign's efforts towards young people have not been the best part of the Clinton effort. And they're going to have to get really good on that really fast. And that's where it's not just about Bernie, but there's also learning from some of the tactical stuff. So that's another piece, I think, to watch.
I think there are three tasks, and I think they're different. And the good news is I think Democrats can walk and chew gum at the same time, so we're capable of this. I think for Hillary Clinton, there's this oddity about her, which is she's an iconic figure. People think they know her. I mean, if I go into a focus group or I went to talk to that independent swing voter you were talking to, and I said, can I tell you some stuff about Hillary Clinton? They would say, I know Hillary Clinton. I've seen her for 30 years. People think they know her. They don't know very much about her. And one of the most important things I think about this convention is for her to introduce herself. And one of the ways about getting both those likability and trust numbers reinforced is for people to really know the real Hillary Clinton, that she was working on children's issues, she was working on legal aid, she was working on all of these things long before the cameras were ever on, long before she ever thought about running for office. That longevity, that working in the trenches, that resilience, that toughness, that's fighting for people, very, very, very important piece to get out. Now, we've had a convention, 1992 convention. Let's remember, people went into the 1992 convention thinking Bill Clinton, as stunning as it was to him, he couldn't possibly imagine how anyone thought this of him, was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, had been to an Ivy League school, which just proved he had born with a silver spoon in his mouth, was elitist, and they didn't have kids. That's what people thought about Bill Clinton in our focus groups right before the Democratic convention. That convention totally turned those perceptions around. So conventions can have a huge impact introducing people. The second thing is, I think this stable of Democrats, I think they should be the ones to deliver the contrast. I think they should be the ones to draw the contrast with Trump. And then the third thing is our state parties, and our state parties really working to get out the vote. And there are some incredible operations out there in places you wouldn't imagine. Utah, Georgia, Arizona, some of these states are really in play. 1 million low propensity Democrats in Georgia, 1 million Democrats who do not have a history of regularly voting. That's the secret sauce. Georgia's in play because it's a swing state and because we got 1 million voters sitting in there waiting for Michelle and Barack Obama to tell them to come out to vote. And frankly, if Barack Obama had stayed in Georgia in 2008, I think he would have won Georgia.
Yeah, and I think that the campaign, John Podesta and Robbie Mook have done a really good job at integrating old Clintonites with new Obamaites, right? And it's worked.
Very much so.
We didn't know that, right? I mean, honestly, a year and a half ago, that was a question. It's not a question anymore. So what it means is that from a tactical standpoint, all this modeling and the million, these million voters she's talking about, we know who they are.
That's right.
We have they're on a list. This is not a hypothetical, right? So in terms of just pounding, using the incredible resources that we have, and the reach of Barack Obama's voice is going to be on everyone's voicemail for a long time, and I think it means that we have the ability to really move the needle on turnout because they were only talking about a small number of states. I mean, you can buy a lot of turnout with money and time and with focus and with good tactics, right? And so this plays to our favor. And I think in top of the energy stuff I was getting into, I have a lot of faith in the Clinton campaign, just in terms of its ability to execute.
And Donald Trump is behind on this stuff. He's way behind.
behind.
He doesn't understand it, frankly. He
Yep.
disses the party that does understand it. They were behind anyway. Frankly, they were catching up. And now that some of their donors aren't putting the money into it. I mean, the Koch brothers get this stuff. So I think we have a huge secret advantage
So
here.
that's our secret vote.
That's
if
our
he's got a
secret
secret
vote.
vote, we've got
We
two
got
to
a
three.
secret
We
vote,
got 2 to
too.
3 points just on tactical.
That's right.
advantage,
I think that's right. Frankly, turnout can
Yep.
change 2 or 3 points in a race.
Yeah.
What are the, running out of time, but what are the biggest issues, policy issues, 2 or 3, that should be accentuated in the fall, and why?
Economy. James Carville is right. It's the economy, stupid. Democrats are behind, and Hillary Clinton is tied with Trump on the economy.
Right.
Democrats are behind Republicans on the economy. We've never won a presidential where we haven't been ahead on the economy. So we need to get an economic alternative out there. We need to be clear where we're going into the future economically. Social Security and Medicare, frankly. We have done a series of polling now, and we've been stunned at how important voters rate this issue in terms of a clear contrast. And then I think it's character. Donald Trump is a dangerous president. Do you really want the nuclear codes in his hand? I don't. He has, someone was just telling me that their favorite ad was he has a bad day golfing and he sends, hand me the nuclear football because I'm mad as hell. Is that what we really want in a president? No. This was a guy who had, when his staff in Florida thought he was upset about things, used to play Hail to the Chief to put him in a better mood. That is a very dangerous temperament for a president.
I think also a basket of issues around security. Trump is going to be pushing that very hard. It was used very effectively by the Republicans in the 2014.
That's true.
I mean, the last playbook they had that worked, right, was this 2014 playbook, which was, a mix of, xenophobia and, fear around our personal safety, right? And so I think, and this issue is emergent, right? It's the way it's playing out in this election is relatively recent because of obviously some of the tragedies that have taken place. And I think we're all still trying to get our arms around it as Democrats. But we're going to have to be very forceful, and I think Hillary's been. I mean, I think she's.
Yeah.
I think they
And
understand
very
this.
experienced.
Yeah, and very experienced. I think they understand this, and I would also argue that, and you to add to character, and I agree with everything Celinda said. Right, is that, but just to add a few things, it's just also just about the sense that we're going to make the system of politics better, and that Washington will be a better place because of our time here, and that cuts against the establishment victory lap thing. I think that this is an area where Sanders has really dramatically improved the Clinton campaign in the last few weeks and made our language around political reform and improving our democracy, I think, far more authentic and real. And I think that matters. I think people view the system as being broken. They want a better system. And we have to your point, we have to make clear about what our version of that is. We know Trump's version, right? The Republicans have frankly been very good about arguing that this thing is broken, right? We've got to do our own version of how we're going to, because I don't think we're going to go back to reinventing government, right? And we're going to make government work better, cost less, which is still, by the way, pretty good language. So I think.
Did you see Trump asked in the first 100, Al Gore in the first 100 days, give me, all your ideas for cutting waste in your department.
Yeah.
It's hysterical.
Yeah, and so the last thing I want to say, in building on Celinda said, because I'm still struggling, and I raised this thing about the victory lap in part to be provocative in some ways,
Yeah.
because I think that what Celinda articulated is sort of the general conventional wisdom about this, and I think that I view it slightly differently. That, and I'm going to sound like a Democrat here, is that I think one of the big stories in American life is that since the end of the Cold War, when everything changed, when Democrats have been in power, things have gotten better, and when Republicans have been in power, things have gotten worse. And when Democrats have been in power, we've had job growth and soaring stock markets and lower annual deficits and rising wages, which we've had, by the way, in the United States. Wages have been going up for 5 years. I mean, incomes have been going up for 5 years. And so the notion that incomes are flat, as Trump says, for 15 years, not factually true, been fact-checked to the wazoo by the New York Times and everybody else. I wish Democrats actually understood that our wages and incomes have been going up for 5 years in the United States. And on the Republican side, we've had recession, job loss, higher deficits. And I think that we have done a horrendously bad job as a party at owning the economic record of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. And I think that when I look back at my time since I met Celinda, what I'm proud of is that my party's kicked ass when we've been in the White House. That's not true of the other party. And we've got to get far more comfortable about using this as part of our contrast, because part of our contrast is that we are a governing party. We have mature adults that are running around. All these people are going to be running around for Barack Obama. These are experienced, popular, successful people. The Republicans don't have a single major politician in the country right now who's net positive in their favorable ratings. Not one, right? We have many, right? Sanders, Michelle, right, going and everything else. And so, but that's because we've governed well. And I think we have to figure out how to own all of that as a badge of honor, and because I think it's in some ways the most powerful contrast we have with the Republican Party.
Last question. This is Pints and predictions. We have battles for the White House, the Senate, which is up for grabs. The House, Democrats need 30 seats to win the House. Question to both of you, starting with you, Celinda. What happens on November 8th?
We win the presidency, but it's close.
Okay.
We take back the Senate. And we
By
pick.
how many?
That I'm not going to predict. That we win some seats in the House, but I think it's hard. And the other thing I would add to your list of predictions is that we win some state legislative seats, which are going to be very important too as we get ready for reapportionment.
Yeah.
So for people in this room who may not know, I won the Hill election
That's
prediction
right.
contest in
I
2008 and 2012.
You're the only two-time winner.
I'm the only one who's won it twice, right? And so, I
You
do.
can change your opinion
I
between
do
now
better
and
in presidential years than I do in off years, right? I think we win the presidency. I think we win the Senate back by a seat or two. I think it's going to be very close because we've had some candidates who are overperforming and others that are underperforming, frankly, right now, right? I think it's it's an election. It never goes the way you think it's going to go. I think the real story, what's interesting is there's a huge difference on the issue of the House, whether we win, assuming Hillary wins, right? Whether she wins by 3 or wins by 6. And also what happens to the Latino vote, right? I mean, there are an enormous number of Republican seats that could be put into play that are, 20 plus 20 on the Latino vote, where we actually will have candidates running. They may not be the best candidates, but if there's a Latino wave, right? Not just a national, if we don't get a national wave. If there's a Latino wave, you could see incumbents who go down in the way that Loretta Sanchez won in '96.
Yep.
Nobody knew she had a chance. And because to the question about Latinos, right? So Obama got 71% of the Latino vote, and Romney got 27%. The sort of conventional wisdom in the Republican Party is they need 40% to win. I'm going to predict now that Trump won't break 20 in the Latino vote. And that in part because of Tim Kaine and his Spanish fluency and his ability to really bring a voice of an American leader to people in Spanish in a way that's unprecedented in American history. And so my view is I think you got to watch the House. I think the House, this, when waves come, right, it's driftwood comes in, right? People move out. Ben Ray Lujan and his team have put together, I think, the best teachable seat that we've seen in a very long time. I'm holding an event tomorrow where Ben Ray's giving the open talk to talk about their strategy of winning the House, and I think that we're going to get really close in the House.
Really close.
Yeah, I think it's going to get really close, and I think one of the things that's going to show is that it's going to make Paul Ryan's life hell.
Miserable. Yeah. Well, thank you. On behalf of The Hill, I want to thank our sponsors, TVB, along with NDWA. Please thank our panelists for a great discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Simon, thank you. Thank you.